Today we're going to be looking at the 2021 February Silver question, Year of the Cow. So in this question, the Chinese New Year has been incorporated, and what's going to happen is Bessie is going to loop through different years to basically try and find her relatives and visit them. So every 12 years, a cycle is going to happen, and what's going to happen is on the first year of the 12 years, or the ox year, Bessie is going to be able to use a portal, and she's going to be able to jump to any cycle. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically watch her time travel through portals, and we're going to try and give the minimum number of years it takes to visit all of her ancestors so that she only uses at most K jumps. So we're going to have her input, and we're going to give the minimum number of years. So let's go look at the algorithm for this question. So the way we're going to solve this question is we're going to solve it through simulation. More specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to start off by solving this question assuming there is no K. So what this is going to look like is we're just going to assume we can take as many jumps as possible, and we're going to first calculate the minimum possible distance using that. So I'm going to calculate two main lists. I'm going to calculate floor and jumps. And so what this is floor is going to be the closest portal. So for 13, that's going to be 12, for 42, 36, for 43, also 36, for 61, 60. And so what we're going to do with floor is we're going to calculate our second list, jumps. And so what jumps is jumps is going to be the distance between the current relative and the previous relative, assuming that this is sorted. And so the way we're going to do this is we're going to have the value floor I minus floor I minus 1. And this is going to be the distance between the two portals, so between the portal of relative I and relative I minus 1. So with the value of floor I minus floor I minus 1, we're going to calculate three main things. So in the first scenario, we're going to have the distance of this is greater than 24. And in that case, we're going to update three values. So we're going to update the value of jumps to floor I minus 1 minus 12. And the reason this final 12 is here is if we were simulating it out exactly, we would start here, and then we would have floor 13 be 12, and then we would have to wait 12 years to reach 24, and then we could jump portals. Or actually, 24, wait 12 years, and then reach 12. But what's going to happen is we're going to have floor I minus 1 minus 12. Because if we were doing math, it would be floor I minus 1 minus floor I plus 1. And then that just evens out to floor I minus 1 minus 1. And all this is just basically to say, if the distance is greater than 24, we're going to have the value of jumps I be floor I minus 1 minus 12. And the next two values we're going to update are going to be D and K. So D is going to be the distance, assuming we can take unlimited amount of steps so far. So if I could take n jumps, then we still need some amount of waiting, and so D is going to be that amount of waiting. So if the distance is greater than 24, we're going to add 12 to D, because we're going to still have to wait out the 12 years to reach the next portal. And then the final value we're going to update is going to be K. And so what K is K is going to be the number of jumps we have so far. So there are scenarios where we don't need to use all n jumps, so K is just going to be the total number of jumps. So in the case that floor I minus floor I minus 1 has a distance greater than 24, then we're still going to have to use a value of K. So we're still going to have to jump K. And so we're going to add 1 to K here. And then in the second scenario, where the distance is equal to 12, what's going to happen is we don't need to jump K anymore. So the value of jumps and the value of K are going to stay the same. We're not going to update them. But the value of D is still going to add 12 because we're still going to wait out 12 years. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're basically just not going to use a jump, but we're still going to wait 12 years because if I jumped and if I didn't jump, it would be the same distance. So we're just not going to use a jump, and then we're going to add 12 to D. And then the final scenario is the distance is less than 12. And in this scenario, we're just not going to add anything. And the reason is because we've already reached this current portal, and we've already added the 12 years of waiting. So in the case of, say, 42 and 43, we can assume for 42 we already added the distance to reach this portal, added the 12 years. So in this case, 43, we don't need to add another 12, we don't need to add anything. So we're just going to continue. And then what we're going to do at the end is we're going to have a while loop through. So in this case, in all of this so far, we've used up small k amount of jumps. But again, the question wants us to use k amount of jumps total. So we're going to have a final while loop, and it's just going to go from k is less than equal to big K. And we're just going to subtract 1 from k, and we're going to actually add the value of jumps, I. So we're going to have a value of like I is equal to 0, I plus plus, and we're going to have d is adding jumps I. So the reason we're going to add jumps I to d is because we're basically going to assume that we're going to need to add some jumps to the point where in the value of small d here, I would just be able to go from 13 to 24, jump, and then to 36 and add this. And so since jumps calculates this value right here, we're just going to add k little k minus big K amounts of jumps back. And we're obviously going to add the smallest one to get the smallest total value. So over here, we're just going to add k minus k total amount of jumps I, so that we have big K total amount of jumps when we finish. So let's go look at the code for this question. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to read in the input. So I'm going to read in cows, and then I'm going to sort them. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our main structures for this program. So just like I described earlier, we're going to have k, d, floor, and jumps. So I'm going to treat the first value as a special case. And what we're basically going to do is we're just going to check whether or not we should floor 0 or cow 0 is going to floor down to 0. And if it's not going to floor down to 0, that means we're going to have to add at least one other jump, and I'm going to push back the value here. And then so once we've basically executed 0 out as a special case, what we're going to do is we're going to continue on for the rest of the cows. And so I'm going to have looping through from 1 to n. We're going to calculate the floor value, and then we're going to have our 3 scenarios. So again, if floor I minus 1 is greater than or equal to 24, what we're going to do is we're going to push it back. We're going to push back floor I minus 1 minus 12. We're going to add 12 to d, and then we're going to add 1 to k. And then the second scenario, we are only going to add 12 to d. In the final scenario, we're just not going to add anything. So that's pretty much the bulk of the program. And then at the very end, what we're going to do is we're going to sort through our jumps, and this is going to sort them from smaller to larger. That way, when we loop through this while loop here, what we're going to do is we're basically just going to have k minus, we're going to add the smallest jump possible. So we're going to find the smallest distances in jumps, and then we're just going to assume we don't jump in between that. And then we're going to add 1 to I. And then at the very end, what we're going to do is we're going to output d. And that's the end of our program.